Hey guys, what's going on? It's me, Tim, with another video about the Leica M10. I want to make sure that I make a lot of videos that shows the full functionality of any camera that I own, and that's no exception of the Leica M10, which is my everyday shooter. I use it to photograph my family, I use it to photograph weddings, I use it to photograph family sessions, I use it to photograph political sessions. I pretty much use my Leica M10 to photograph just about everything that I shoot. And I feel like in the photography community, what ends up happening more often than not is we feel that certain cameras are niched to only being one thing, or only being capable of shooting one type of genre. Or when we think of Leica cameras, we generally think of street photography and Joe Greer, and there are wedding photographers like my good buddy Ben Hosh that shoots his Leica M10s at weddings. And I like to shoot my Leicas in all sorts of different situations because they're by far more capable tools they are the most capable tool that I feel that will help me get the job done. Now I know there are other cameras like the Canon R6 that I'm currently filming on that can do just as good of a job. But there's just something about the connection with shooting a Leica body that is different, and the process is different. And I feel that so often people feel that with manual focus cameras, that they can't work as fast as they can with an autofocus camera. And I think that's the difference between a lot of creatives and a lot of photographers, is we don't become one with a piece of equipment before we move on to the next piece of equipment. That we're always in this constant search for perfection, when perfection is probably extremely it's probably what we have in our bag right now. Like the Leica M10 is as perfect of a camera as a camera can be. That has all of the settings that any Canon, Nikon, or Sony camera has today. It just works differently. And I'm a super firm believer that if you want to become a better photographer, that you have to shoot and photograph things often with the same piece of equipment, even if things don't quite work out the way that you hope. But you have to force yourself to work with different types of equipment, different types of tools that will help stretch you as a creative. I'm a firm believer that if you are not being stretched, you are not growing as a photographer. So I want to share with you guys a couple of things, a couple of thoughts about the Leica M10 and family photography. Thing number one is, like, I think a lot of people say that whenever you have your first kid, everything changes. And for a lot of reasons, my journey to Leica from Canon all really started with my first kid. I had my first son, and I wanted something that was kind of small, that wasn't a DSLR, that didn't necessarily have to pack and lug around. So that's kind of actually, I started with the Fuji system. I wanted something that was small and compact. And then that led me to the Fuji X Pro 1, and then I had the X100S or T for a little while, and then eventually I ended up moving to a Leica for more of a pure kind of experience. And I have three very active, young, borderline crazy little boys that really keep me on my toes. And because they keep me on my toes, when I have my camera out, they are constantly moving, constantly never staying in place. I mean, they are photographer kids, which means they hate just standing still and smiling for the camera. So you have to figure out how to catch them in situations where they aren't expecting the camera. And sometimes you have to use zone focusing and waiting for moments to happen. And when you're constantly using a piece of equipment in your personal life and your professional life, it makes things like shooting families, large families, extremely easy, because you know what to expect from the tool that you're using. And the Leica M10 is what I use to photograph primarily all of my cameras, and I bring this alongside as my digital option alongside my medium format film cameras, which are also all manual focus cameras. I don't own I do own a few automatic cameras, but my medium format cameras are all manual focus, or at least I manual focus on them only. And I think when you are using the tool a certain way and you're used to photographing a certain way, it almost feels that when you pick up a digital camera that has an autofocus, it's almost like a cheat code. I don't feel connected to the images that I take on my autofocus camera, not because they're not good, but it feels like I want it to kind of be more hands-on with what I'm creating. So when I'm photographing families, and especially little kids under the age of 5, generally what I do is I set my distance, my autofocus distance, to a certain area, and then I wait for that child to interact and walk into that section as I'm either kind of talking to them. Oh, hey, and here is something that you can do when you're photographing family sessions. Bring a Bluetooth speaker with you. Talk to the parents beforehand and say, like, hey, what's your child's favorite song? Is it Yo Gabba Gabba? Is it the new song from Encanto? We Don't Talk About Bruno. If it's any of those type of songs, you can really get a child to interact with you as a photographer if you're playing music that they love. And it is one of those things that I have, it's one of those little tricks that I've had up my sleeve for the last couple of years to really get kids, even kids who don't want to smile or have had enough or is ready for snack, to continue to smile and work with me as I'm photographing them and as I'm trying to get them into focus with my manual camera. It's just so much easier when you have music playing. You can put it on your phone, put it in your back pocket, you bring a Bluetooth speaker with you. Just make it easier for you to photograph things. And one of the things that I feel like when you're dealing with families and you're dealing with any camera, that being able to make your life easier with kids is definitely a huge plus. So when I'm photographing families, and I'm not just like, I'm interacting with the kids, I'm using the live view so I can make sure that my camera is in focus, because 9 times out of 10, it's still 2022, Omicron is still around, so I do wear my mask just out of respect to my families. And while I'm wearing my mask, I can kind of see what I'm doing via live view and getting everything in focus. And then I use, one of the other tools that I really like to use is the red, I think they have red, white, and blue, where you can see what's in focus in what area. So you know when a child is getting ready to walk into focus, or it makes it easier to get into focus. And that's one of the brilliant parts about the Leica M10 that I really enjoy. But I think there are a lot of things that we can do when you're using a certain tool. If you're using a Leica, or if you're using any other manual focus camera, that you can use to kind of get used to shooting with it. And that is to do one of two things. Shoot with it often, shoot with it all the time, which goes into shoot with it often, and know the camera inside and out. So when you're working with a family and you're shooting something that's like, that is manual focus, or something that's a little bit harder to get things in focus, if you're using like the rangefinder patch, that you know exactly how that equipment works. And Leica is no different than anything else that you're shooting. It's no different than a Canon camera. In fact, I would even challenge you to manual focus with your Canon camera to kind of get used to focusing, or your Nikon camera, whatever camera you own, to get used to just manually focusing. Because I feel like you can have just a little bit more control of your images. Because even autofocus, as great as they are today, and they are fantastic, they are amazing, autofocus cameras, like I said, it's like a cheat code. It's like having the best of all worlds these days. It makes doing photography so much easier. But being able to manual focus means that you will be able to get the exact parts of the image in focus that you want. I just want to kind of share with you guys today, as I just share a little bit about my process with my Leica M10 as I'm photographing families, and how I get kids to interact with me as I'm photographing them. So that way it's easier for the kids, it's enjoyable for the kids, which then makes it enjoyable for the parents, which then makes it enjoyable for you in post as you're editing these images. Because not every child, not every family is necessarily going to, there's a lot of, let me back this up. There's a lot of things that go into having your photographs taken as a family. And there's a lot of stressful things going into that process. I know, because we get our family photographed once a year, and there's all sorts of moving parts. It's outfits, it's making sure that your kids have snack, you know, make sure your kids aren't getting dirty. There's all sorts of things that are going through your head. Do I look great? Do I look fat in these clothes? Like, you know, did I make the right outfit choice? There's all sorts of things that go into being a family photographer and being a family that's being photographed, that the last thing you want to do as a photographer is just kind of make sure that everyone is at ease and that you know your equipment inside and out, and that you can make the experience enjoyable for the family that you're photographing, so that way they come back and they work with you again. That's all I really got for you guys today. I just kind of want to share a little bit of my process here with you, kind of share a little bit of my thoughts of how I work with my Leica M10 as I'm photographing families. And I hope this has been enjoyable for you, and that you learned something new, and that, you know, I'll continue to make these videos about my processes with my Leicas, so that way you can have processes when you pick up your Leica and you go out and shoot with it, and maybe think a little bit different than what you did before. I just want to thank you guys for watching. If you're not subscribed to the channel, please make sure that you subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Peace.